Now, there are quite a few people out there that know that Babe Ruth got his start with the Baltimore Orioles, but it wasn't this Orioles team. This Orioles team actually began in 1894 as the Milwaukee Brewers. It was the late 1800s. Teams were created, they were moved around, they folded, they got renamed. It happened all the time. This team went from Milwaukee to St. Louis, where they became the St. Louis Browns. It was because of their brown socks, but they just shortened it to Browns. And then in 1954, the St. Louis Browns left Missouri and they moved to Maryland, becoming the Baltimore Orioles. Now, the story is that the name was picked because of that first Baltimore Orioles team, but there is a connection between the Oriole and the city of Baltimore because the Oriole is the state bird of Maryland, and they even picked the bird's colors to put on their uniforms. Now, believe it or not, this Boston Red Sox team that we watched today is the second team in Boston to go by the name. The original name, the Red Stockings, actually started in Cincinnati, and then a couple of guys that played for that team went to Boston. They started the Boston Red Sox that became the Boston Braves, and this team started as the Boston Americans. They even won the first World Series in 1903 against the Pittsburgh Pirates. However, in 1907, there was a change of ownership, and in the rebranding process, still wearing the Red Sox with their uniforms, they picked a name that people would remember from previous versions, and just that boost the team's brand in the city, they went with the Boston Red Stockings and are the Boston Red Sox. Naming rights wouldn't even be a thing until decades later. Now, if you're like me and you thought the name Rays was just short for Devil Rays, then you'd be wrong. The Tampa Bay Rays are named the Rays because of the, this is a quote, ray of sunshine you get in the state of Florida. And I combine that with humidity, they might as well call them the Tampa Bay Sweat. But it's easy to think that it's short for Devil Rays because that's what they were called first, the Devil Rays. Team started in 1998. The ownership first wanted to be called the Stingrays. They found out that that was the most common type of ray in Florida. But that was also the name of a Hawaiian Winter League team called the Maui Stingrays. And I guess they didn't want to pay the $35,000 it would cost to get the rights to that name. Then they wanted to go with just the Rays. But, and this is absolutely true, a designer with Major League Baseball, her name was Ann Ochi, thought it wasn't masculine enough. So here's where this gets interesting. The owner decided to call them the Devil Rays, and the fans hated it. They didn't like the name Devil, and a lot of them didn't even like it being a Ray. So what he did was he held a vote between the Devil Rays and the Manta Rays. Which, you know, you look at that and you see it as somebody trying to keep the name and just make this competition so they can say the fans voted on it. I mean, if you pick another Ray, then the people that hated having a Ray aren't really going to like either one of them. And Manta Ray is actually worse than Devil Ray. So if you had a choice between Devil Ray and Manta Ray, you're going to go with Devil Ray. And it wasn't until 2005, the new ownership comes in. They want to get rid of the name Devil, and they change it to Ray for the reasons that I said right when we opened this. Now, the name Yankees isn't on any uniform at all in New York, so if they were still the New York Hilltoppers, uniforms could look exactly the same. It'd be hard to fit it in the logo, but they started out as the Hilltoppers because they played at Hilltop Park in Washington Heights. But as it is the case with some teams in this list, newspaper reporters came into play, and I guess they didn't like the name Hilltoppers. One editor said it was awkward putting that in the headlines, so this editor just decided, to heck with it, we're going to call them the Yanks or the Yankees. So that's what they started to do. Back in 1904 is the first evidence of them calling them the Yankees. So newspapers started picking up, and everybody just called them the Yankees. It wouldn't be until 1913 when Rupert Murdoch bought the team, and that's when the name Yankees became official. At that time, they were playing in the Polo Grounds with the Giants, and then in 1923, they built Yankee Stadium. It was 1977, and Toronto got a baseball team, so the ownership decided to put on a naming contest. Now, there were 4,000 unique names out of over 30,000 entries, and some of the other names that they got were the Bluebirds, which was a reference to the national bird of Canada, the Beavers, and the Beavers kind of a well-known symbol of Canada. They're defined by hard work and determination. Canadians, which is a little too on the nose, but there was always already a hockey team that was pretty popular in Montreal using that at the time. So even if it had one, they probably wouldn't have been able to use it. The Northmen, Canada's North, so I didn't like this one. It was very creative. And the Metros for the Toronto metropolitan area. Ultimately, they liked the name Blue Jays, which is a direct reference to the national bird of Canada, the blue jay, and that's where the name came from. Thanks for watching, guys. If you do like what you saw, make sure you subscribe, follow us on YouTube, support the channel. Also, you can catch entire episodes on our website at firepitsports.com, or you can listen to the Couchmakers podcast on Apple and Spotify.